Let's begin with a story. On March 12, 2020, sales of toilet paper rose 734% when compared to the same day in 2019. American shoppers wiped inventory clean at Amazon and supermarkets across the country. U.S. toilet paper sales totaled $1.4 billion in the 4 weeks between March 7th and April 7th, a 102% increase over the previous year's sales. At first glance, the unknown threat of the COVID-19 virus appears to be the only reason for this spike in sales. Given an indefinite stay-at-home order, Americans stocked up to avoid running out. But then something odd happened. Americans kept buying. Despite reassurances from retailers, Americans filled guest rooms, linen closets, and basements with apocalyptic quantities of toilet paper. So what's going on here? What would cause people to buy irrational levels of toilet paper, especially when they've been told supplies will last? Well, the answer to that question lies partially in thinking errors known as cognitive biases. You see, your brain is powerful but not perfect, and in an attempt to simplify information, your brain often makes mistakes. And it's these mistakes that lead to irrational decisions. Now, cognitive biases wouldn't be that big of a deal if your poor choices were limited to buying too much toilet paper. You might have a storage problem, but the overall effect on your life would be minimal. But cognitive biases can also lead you to make poor decisions in important areas of your life. Given the right conditions, cognitive biases can lead you to pay too much, stay in the wrong relationship, and ignore important information. But thankfully, by learning about cognitive biases, you can reduce the chance that they'll affect your life. In his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, psychologist Daniel Kahneman describes two operating systems in the brain. System 1 is fast, and it makes decisions that are largely subconscious, effortless, and automatic. This is the part of your brain that allows you to build habits and react in an instant when faced with threats. System 2 is slow, and it makes decisions that are conscious, logical, and require a lot of cognitive processing. This is the part of your brain that allows you to do math, learn new languages, and build things. One way to simplify all of this is to think of System 1 as being fast and efficient and easy to use, but kind of dumb. And then to think of System 2 as being smart and powerful, but hard to use and an energy hog. Now, your brain, like most things, is inherently lazy, and it likes to take the path of least resistance. So it often uses the fast and dumb brain when it should be using the smart but slow brain. And it's this tendency that is the birthplace of all cognitive biases. Now, believe it or not, Wikipedia lists more than 100 cognitive biases, and while talking about all of them might increase my watch time, I'm pretty sure you don't have an entire day to watch this video. So to make better use of your time, here are 5 of the most common cognitive biases you might experience. And hopefully, by learning about these, you can reduce the odds that they'll cause you to make a poor decision. Bias number 1 is the bandwagon effect. The bandwagon effect refers to our tendency to do something primarily because everyone else is doing it. Examples include adopting beliefs, behaviors, and attitudes. From an evolutionary standpoint, the bandwagon effect makes sense for 2 reasons. First, if a large group of people are doing something, then there's a good chance that it's safe and beneficial. And second, by following the crowd, you get to save energy because you don't have to think about what you're doing. The bandwagon effect can be helpful when the behaviors are beneficial. That might be avoiding danger, adopting an exercise routine, or fostering better beliefs. But the bandwagon effect can also lead us to make poor decisions. That might be joining the 2008 housing crisis, adopting a fad diet, or buying copious amounts of toilet paper. Bias number 2 is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is our tendency to favor information that supports our existing beliefs and values and devalue information that doesn't. This bias is problematic because it keeps us from changing our opinion for the better, even when presented with facts. Everyday examples of confirmation bias include the negotiator who ignores facts and makes a poor deal, the reader who ignores the advice in a book that is hard to hear, and the shopper who believes they need a few hundred more rolls of toilet paper because the shelves are almost empty. Bias number 3 is availability bias. Availability bias is our tendency to overestimate the possibility of something based on how easily we remember examples of that thing. Now, what we see in the media highly influences this bias. Everyday examples of availability bias are the person who believes their odds of winning the lottery are high after watching winners on the news, the person who believes they will be bitten by a shark after hearing of a recent attack, and the person who believes they need a few more dozen rolls of toilet paper after watching a story on the news about the toilet paper crisis. Bias number 4 is the anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is our tendency to let the first piece of information we receive about something sway our decisions. One way that anchoring bias affects us is when shopping. Studies show that the initial offer heavily influences what we pay for an item. So if the initial offer for something is high, we typically pay a lot more for the item than we will if the initial offer is low. Anchoring bias can also affect what we think about people. And that's because our first impression of someone often affects what we think about that person moving forward. Bias number 5 is the sunk cost bias. The sunk cost bias is our tendency to continue an endeavor if we have already given it time, money, or effort. This bias is problematic if the endeavor itself is no longer beneficial. Everyday examples of sunk cost bias are the person who won't end a long-term relationship because doing so feels like a waste of time, or the entrepreneur who continues to sink money into their business even though all signs indicate that the business has failed. All right, before we end this video, I want to give you 3 quick ideas that can help you avoid cognitive biases. Idea number 1 is do your research. As you've learned, cognitive biases occur when you're not thinking logically. You overpay for a car because you don't know its value. You think your odds of winning the lottery are high because you don't know the facts. And you fill your third bedroom with toilet paper because you think the world is ending. Now, the best way to fix these problems is by doing your research. When you know the market value of a car, you won't overpay. When you know the odds of winning the lottery, you won't spend half of your paycheck on tickets. And when you realize that there is plenty of toilet paper for everyone, you won't fill up your third bedroom. Idea number 2 is drop the ego. Another reason we tend to get caught up in biases is because we get stuck in our ways. We develop a belief or an idea, and then we act like that is gospel. This problem gets even worse when your ego gets involved. Because people hate to be wrong, they often look for anything that they can find to prove that they're right. And in doing so, they let go of valuable information. The best way to fix this problem is by dropping your ego, but that can be a challenging first step. One way to fix this problem is by focusing on the big picture. You see, when you let go of your incessant need to be right, most things improve. Negotiations end better when both parties are happy, and scientific studies are more accurate when the scientist considers all information. Idea number 3 is get feedback. So when you're heavily invested in something that isn't going well, like a long-term relationship or a business, then it's typically not long before your emotions get involved. And when this happens, it's hard to think clearly. And that's because strong emotions tend to cloud our judgment. One of the best ways to fix this problem is by asking for feedback from people who aren't emotionally involved in what you're doing. People on the outside are often able to see your problems loud and clear. Since they're not emotionally involved, they're able to think about the problems logically. Now, to do this, it's important that you find somebody who you trust who also understands your situation. Once you find this person, ask for their feedback, and then, assuming that it's good information, do your best to follow their advice. Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for answering. Look, I really need your advice. Yeah. Look, do you think I should buy some more toilet paper? I've only got like 460 rolls left. Yeah, I think I'm going to run out. But you don't think that's a good idea? But have you seen the news? Man, the world's ending. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, it would be great if you could subscribe and hit the like button. And if you want more information like this, I highly recommend you check out my meditation app, Aware. I've linked to it below in the description. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.